Hey everyone, ever get that kind of samurai itch? Like maybe you're prepping for a trip to Japan, or you're just a huge history nerd like me,
Or maybe just fascinated by warrior cultures in general.
right? Well, today we're going deep on Bushido, the soul of Japan,
Uh-huh.
by this guy Inazo Nitobé.
It's really a classic.
Yeah, it's like cracking the code of what made these warriors so legendary. We're using the audiobook on YouTube by the channel Illucertus, but we're focusing on the book's ideas, not like a video review or anything.
Exactly.
So what's interesting is Nitobe doesn't just teach you sword moves, right?
No, he lays out Bushido as this whole code that shaped everything for a samurai, their values, how they dealt with people, even how they faced death. Like if you know European chivalry,
Yeah.
it's kind of similar, but with very Japanese roots.
And get this, he actually says in the book that he never formally learned Bushido, but it still formed his whole sense of right and wrong.
It's like he absorbed it from the air.
Totally. He calls it like breathing in a moral atmosphere, which is a cool way to put it. But what got me was how he links this code back to all sorts of influences, not just like battlefield stuff.
Yeah, he brings up Buddhism, Shintoism, Confucianism, all major players shaping Bushido. Like
Yes.
with Buddhism, you get that whole calmly accepting fate thing, even death.
Right.
There's a story about a famous sword master. His student dies by accident.
Oh, wow.
And instead of freaking out, the master just accepts it like it was meant to be.
It shows you how deep that idea of life and death is in those philosophies.
Exactly. Impermanence and all that.
Then you've got Shintoism.
Yeah.
That seems to be where the fierce loyalty to the emperor comes from. And that patriotism that, honestly, you still see in Japan today.
You think it's a straight line from there to now.
I'm not sure. It's a thought, right? Like,
Yeah.
Is it that simple?
Well, there's definitely a connection there. I mean, the way Shintoism reveres your ancestors
Wow.
and how the emperor is seen as descended from gods, that sets the stage for a really strong national identity. And loyalty. It's part of the foundation.
Okay. And then there's Confucianism. This one seems more like down-to-earth ethics, how you should act.
Yeah, it's very much about how to build a harmonious society. It's got these 5 key relationships: ruler and subject, father and son, husband and wife, older and younger brother, and friend to friend.
Like a blueprint for how to treat people, right?
Exactly. And it's not just ancient history. You see these relationships playing out all the time in Japan, and their families, their businesses, everywhere. Pretty fascinating.
It is. It's wild how old ideas like this still matter today. Now, Nitobe gets into specific virtues of Bushido. He uses this word rectitude a lot.
Which sounds kind of stiff.
It does, right.
Yep.
But it basically means doing what's right, being honest.
Yeah.
But then he throws in giri, which started meaning the right reason to do things.
Okay.
But it could get warped into just doing what society expects, even if it feels wrong.
Oh, I see. Like peer pressure almost.
Exactly. Have
Yeah.
you ever dealt with that? Doing what you're supposed to, even when it feels wrong. Man, I know I have.
All the time. It's a struggle. And you see that play out in so many samurai stories. Like, imagine a samurai who finds out his lord is plotting treason against the emperor. His giri, his duty, says he's got to obey, right? But his rectitude, his sense of justice, says it's totally messed up.
Yikes. What do you even do in that situation?
Right. There's no easy answer. It's a dilemma.
That's heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Then there's valor. You'd think that's just charging into battle, guns blazing.
Oh, Bushido goes deeper than that.
It does.
It's more about knowing when to fight and when to hold back. There's a story about this samurai who spares a younger opponent in a duel. He could have killed him.
But he didn't.
He realized true strength is about more than just aggression. Sometimes mercy is the stronger move. And then there's that story about the young prince of Sendai, right?
Yeah.
He's told it's shameful for a samurai to admit he's hungry.
Seriously.
Yeah, shows you how much they valued hiding your feelings, even basic needs.
Makes you wonder if we've lost something in our world where everyone's supposed to express everything,
Could be. But it's a tough balance. It's
Oh.
interesting how Ninobe ties that self-control to the tea ceremony. Like, every movement in that ceremony has meaning.
You think we've got anything like that today? Something that teaches that level of discipline and politeness?
Good question. Maybe it's not about specific rituals. Maybe it's about just being aware of how we act, our interactions, like that tea ceremony.
Right.
Maybe it's about finding that quiet focus, that control, and all the craziness of life.
I like that. Okay, I think it's time we talk about the big one. What everyone thinks of when they hear samurai.
Seppuku.
Yeah, ritual suicide. Pretty intense stuff, especially for us outsiders.
Yeah.
Kind of shocking, to be honest.
It gets your attention, that's for sure. But Nitobé gives us a lot of context. He says seppuku wasn't just some random act. It was a whole institution with rules, with meaning behind it.
It was about more than just dying.
Way more. It was a way to atone for screwing up, to avoid disgrace, even to prove you meant what you said. Like a statement.
It's kind of like in Western culture, where we admire figures like Cato, right, who chose death over dishonor.
It's not about glorifying suicide, for sure, but understanding it within the culture it came from.
Yeah.
Think of the 47 Ronin. They avenged their master, even though they knew they'd be sentenced to death.
Yeah, that's a famous story.
They chose seppuku rather than live with the shame of failing their master. Powerful stuff.
Really shows how seppuku was tied to this idea of redress.
Right. Setting things right, even if the law can't or won't.
This redress thing is fascinating. It's not just revenge. It's about restoring balance, owning your actions.
Yeah.
How did that fit into the whole Bushido picture in Japanese society at large?
It was like woven into everything. Redress was the way you upheld justice when the official channels failed. Imagine some powerful lord does something awful,
Oh,
but he's too high up to get punished legally. That's when a samurai might feel like it's on him to make things right.
wow. Even if it meant risking his own life.
Exactly. Restoring the balance, even outside the law.
Intense stuff. So we've got seppuku as this ultimate act of taking responsibility and redress as this way of fixing things when the system fails.
Makes you think.
It does. And speaking of intense, got to talk about the sword, right? Like central to the samurai.
Yeah.
Literally and symbolically, as Nitobé puts it. He talks about this ceremony where boys as young as 5 were given a real sword.
Wow, that's...
I know. Can you imagine that today? It blows my mind.
Yeah, that ceremony tells you everything. The sword wasn't just a weapon. It was like joining the Bushido club, a commitment.
But even with all that reverence for the sword,
Yeah.
Bushido was also about not using it lightly.
Right. It's about wielding power responsibly, not just giving into aggression.
So it's a paradox, right?
Yeah.
The sword is super important, almost worshipped.
But mastering it means knowing when not to swing it.
Yeah, that seems to be a theme here, this balance between strength and holding back.
Yeah.
Action and thinking things through.
It's a core tension.
Okay, before we wrap up this part of our dive, I got to address something. People might think women were just like background characters in Bushido, tireless damsels waiting around.
Oh, not at all.
It's more complicated than that.
Way more. Yeah, they were expected to be wives, mothers, the traditional roles, but they were also trained in self-defense. And they upheld Bushido values, too.
Really?
Oh, yeah. You see incredible examples of their courage, their loyalty. There's this one story, really heartbreaking.
What happened?
This woman, she chose suicide over being captured by the enemy. But she made sure her body would be found in a way that was modest, even in death, she was protecting her honor.
Wow, that's powerful. It really challenges how we think about women in that time. It wasn't about the same freedoms we talk about now,
For sure.
but it was still a form of power.
Absolutely. And it shows how, while Bushido was shaped by its time period,
Yeah.
the core values like honor, courage, loyalty, those cross gender lines.
It makes you think, what did it even mean to have power as a woman back then?
Right. A whole different world.
We've only just scratched the surface here, haven't we? Bushido was more than just rules for warriors. It was a whole way of life for a whole culture. But the big question is, what does it all mean now? Is it just a history lesson? Or can these old values still give us some direction?
That's what we'll dig into in the next part of our deep dive.
I'm looking forward to it. And for all of you listening out there, think about what we've talked about so far. Do any of these Bushido values, loyalty, honor, self-control, do they speak to you? And if so, how could you bring those ideas into your life? We'll be back soon to tackle those big questions and more. Welcome back to our Bushido breakdown. We've dug into the history, the values, all that good stuff. But now I'm thinking, how do we connect this warrior code to, today? Is it even relevant anymore?
It's a good question. It's something Nitobé thought about a lot, too. His argument is Bushido went way beyond the samurai themselves.
Right.
It's soaked into the whole Japanese culture,
Interesting. So, even when the samurai class disappeared, their code kind of stuck around.
That's the idea. You look at modern Japan, you see bits of Bushido everywhere. The politeness,
Right.
the crazy work ethic, that strong loyalty to, your group, your company.
I see what you mean. But, couldn't you say that's just Japanese culture in general?
True, it's not a simple thing. Culture's complicated, right?
Yeah.
But you can't deny that Bushido played a big part. That sense of duty, honor, taking care of your people.
That's strong there.
Yeah, it's part of the fabric of their society.
Okay, so let's get practical. What are some examples of this Bushido influence that we might actually recognize?
Well, remember giri, that sense of obligation, duty.
Yeah, we talked about that.
It's still huge in Japan, like in social situations, even in business deals. People go above and beyond to fulfill their obligations, even if it means like personal sacrifice.
It's more than just like keeping your promises.
Yeah, it's a whole way of life. And then there's the Japanese work ethic. It's legendary, right?
Yeah, they're known for it.
That drive. I think there's a Bushido link there for sure.
Makes sense. The samurai were all about discipline, serving their lord, all that.
And think about a modern company, right?
Yeah.
Striving for excellence, putting the company first. It's not that different when you think about it.
Like the values transferred over.
Right. And don't forget that insane politeness.
Oh, yeah, I've heard stories.
Even just like casual interactions, there's this level of courtesy you don't see a lot in the West. Bushido is all about proper manners, thinking of others.
Interesting. So we see how these Bushido values have really like woven themselves into today's Japan. But here's a question for you listeners out there.
It is.
Do you think these values are like unique to Japan? Or could they be applied anywhere?
Now, that is a good question to ponder. I think it makes you think about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Can we, in our modern world, actually learn something from this ancient code?
It's easy to dismiss it as like old-fashioned, out of date. But I'm starting to see there's more to it.
Oh, for sure. And Nitobé seems to hint at this at the end of his book.
What does he say?
He's like, look, pure Bushido as it was, maybe not practical today, but the ideas behind it, honor, duty, self-improvement,
Okay.
those never go out of style.
So it's not about like literally becoming samurai.
Right. No.
It's about taking the spirit of Bushido and seeing how it fits into our lives.
Exactly. Think of it like a framework for growing as a person.
Yeah.
The samurai's dedication, their discipline, their perseverance, those are things that apply anywhere, anytime.
It's about finding your own inner strength.
Yeah, being guided by a strong moral compass, which, you know, in our crazy world today,
Yeah.
that feels pretty powerful, doesn't it?
It does. Like it's reminding us that we can all be great, even if we're not samurai.
Exactly. And while some parts of Bushido might seem off today, like the whole blind loyalty thing,
Yeah, it's a little iffy.
there's still so much we can take from it. That focus on responsibility, doing the right thing, having a purpose. It's about being the best you can be.
I like that. Okay, we've talked about the good side of Bushido's legacy, but what about the like downsides? This was a code that was okay with violence, even like glorified death sometimes. Can we just ignore that?
You're right. We can't just gloss over the tough stuff. The focus on self-sacrifice, the strict social hierarchy, the potential for, you know, following orders without questioning.
It makes you think, in a society where everyone's supposed to fit in, is there even room to speak up?
Right. Even if you see something wrong, something unjust,
Yeah.
that giri, that sense of duty, it could be used to silence people, to force everyone into the same mold. So yeah, even good values can have a dark side.
It's a reminder to be careful not to romanticize the past.
Absolutely. Bushido wasn't perfect. We got to be aware of that.
So it's not about blindly following Bushido, but more like thinking critically about it.
Yeah, taking the wisdom that applies to us and leaving the rest behind.
It's about finding those nuggets of truth that we can use in our own lives.
I like that. Nuggets of truth. And it brings us back to Nitobé's question. Can Bushido really offer guidance in a world so different from, you know, feudal Japan?
It's a question we all got to answer for ourselves, I guess.
And I'd love to hear what you think, listeners. What parts of this code speak to you? Do any of the principles resonate?
Maybe it's about taking more responsibility for your actions.
Or maybe it's finding the courage to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard.
Or just bringing more focus to your everyday life, how you work, how you treat people.
Whatever you take away, I hope this deep dive has gotten you thinking, giving you a fresh perspective on this part of Japanese culture.
Yeah, it's definitely been an eye-opener. And this is just the start.
Oh yeah, there's so much more to explore in Nitobé's book and beyond.
So keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep diving deeper into the things that interest you.